This is Gwen Talks Radio, where intimate conversations reveal, heal, inspire, and entertain. And now, here's your host, Tess Cacciatore.
Okay, here we go. This is Gwen Talks Radio, and I'm your host, Tess Cacciatore. I am feeling really sad this week, and I just want to get it off my chest because I think it ties into a beautiful story and ties into our guest today. So you've heard me mention my friends Lori and Steven that live in Colorado. I mentioned them on the Valentine's show about they met on their first date, and he knew that that would be his bride-to-be, and they've been happily married for over 30 years. I've known Steven since I was in my early 20s. We met in New York as well. And on Monday, March 26th, we lost Steven to a 5-year battle with a lung disease, waiting patiently and desperately for a lung transplant surgery. So, in deep shock and sadness, I sat in my chair looking out the window, and I was on a call at the time trying to conduct business in the best way possible. And I was looking out the window, and I have this set of stairs that comes up to my sidewalk that leads to my front door. And there's kind of a maybe 2.5 foot tall wall that is on either side of these steps. And I kept seeing this object moving around on the steps, and I finally fixated on it long enough to realize that they were actually legs attached to a human being that were laying on my steps. Well, often I have children that are walking home from school that like to balance on the wall and dance around in the rosemary bushes and all that, so I realized that wasn't that case. And my instant next thought was, oh my gosh, there's a homeless person on my front porch. And I thought maybe I should call the cops because my mind was distracted in 5 different directions. And when I heard myself think that, I went, no, this is some kind of a blessing, some kind of a message. Maybe Steven sent him here. So I put on my boots. I walked outside and had this conversation with this young man by the name of Vladimir, who just landed on my front steps to take a nap. And, of course, he was homeless, and it ties into all the things that I believe in, and I just had a conversation with him. What's going on? What's your story? We talked for a bit. He said he was hungry and that he wanted a cigarette and a ham sandwich. Well, first off, I don't eat ham and I don't smoke cigarettes, so I said I'll go inside and I'll dig up whatever I can, but please, it's going to be cold and rainy tonight. Can you make your way down to Union Rescue Mission? I'll make a call down there. I came inside. I hadn't gone to the store yet this week, so I grabbed anything I could possibly think of, put it in a bag, a container of apple juice and yogurts and ranch dressing with steamed vegetables and anything I could find. And then I got my tap card out for the subway. Don't know how much was left on it, but I gave it to him. I took out the change that was in a bag in my car that I usually use for meters and handed that over to him. And I said, please make your way over to Union Rescue Mission. They're waiting for you. Just ask for Jerry and you can get a bed tonight if you get there by 6. I need plenty of time to get down there. I felt like we can connect him with the Dream Center, which was our guest last week. And I thought how serendipitous and divine that here we had this guest last week that came out of addiction and got himself off the street and into the Dream Center. Now he works there. So if I can really truly connect the dots for this person, maybe he can get to the Dream Center as well. I was totally thrilled because it seemed to feel like it was God sent by Steven and that he landed on the right steps in this neighborhood. And I was hoping with all hope that this would be something that could help. Well, I found out the last couple of days he'd never checked into the Union Rescue Mission, and that's fine. I had to let that go, but it gave me hope that all of us can make a difference. All of us can take the time to stop and understand what other people's story is, because we all have a story to share. And today on my show, I'm very, very thrilled to finally get a dear friend, Lori Woodley, on. She does the most amazing work with youth in her organization called All It Takes. We're going to hear from her and her story, and also a wonderful young man that I met recently by the name of Shane Feldman, who has an organization called Count Me In. All It Takes and Count Me In, how fabulous is that? We're going to have a great conversation right after this break and talk about how we give the power for youth to speak out in this episode called Youth Speak Out. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm David Longoria with my new song, Playground, featuring Dallas Lovato with me. Time to dance. Playground is available now on all digital music stores and streaming. David Longoria featuring Dallas Lovato. Playground.
Here we go. Welcome back to Gwen Talks Radio. This is your host, Tess Cacciatore, and I am so fired up about this show because of the two guests that we have on. There is a movement that is giving me such inspiration and fire in my belly that has started a while back, and obviously way back in the 60s and many decades ago, but this feels like there's a new revolution that's happening. And we have a lot of interesting facts that we're going to unveil and go to a place where we're going to be able to really shine a light on the youth that are being empowered and are empowered, and the people that are leading the way is in as far as the organizations go. So my first guest is a very dear friend of mine, Lori Woodley. She's a public speaker, trainer, and author in communication, personal power, and social impact. She's the founder and executive director of All It Takes, which is a nonprofit organization that teaches bold and compassionate leadership through her Notice, Choose, Act framework. I met her. Well, I'm just going to bring her on. Hello, Lori. Come on to the show because I'm going to talk about when I met you on another radio show, and you were the one that really lit my fire about the Dakota Access Pipeline. So, hi. I'm so glad.
Good morning, Tess. Thank you for this opportunity to be with you. Exciting.
I know. Well, I've been wanting you to have on the. I wanted to have you on the show since I began this last October. And I kept thinking there's the right time. And now is such a perfect time because there's so much that you do in the world with the All It Takes workshops and camps and curriculum and the Notice, Choose, Act framework. I don't even know where to begin with you because you shine a light and you are helping parents raise socially conscious children. So, and speaking of your children, we'll talk about your daughter as well because she's a mover shaker, wonderful person. Apples don't fall far from the tree.
Thank you.
So let's start with All It Takes, and then we're going to fall into the Dakota Access Pipeline because I want to hear about All It Takes and what you all are doing in the camps, and let our listeners know about what you do in your workshops and your camps and your curriculum and your framework.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. All It Takes Shailene and I started it in 2010 as an opportunity to take what I was doing in public schools, because I'd been a public school counselor for 25 years. And what I was doing on my school campuses was like having huge shift on how kids were treating one another. And at some point I was like, wait, I have to go global. This is much bigger than just what I'm doing. I'm being selfish here. I'm being small-minded. So, we decided to kind of open All It Takes and take it bigger. And, our youth are absolute, they're the source of our solutions, right? They often are put as incapable. And, so many people speak for our youth. And I listen to parents tell their youth what they think, what they like, what they don't like. And I'm like, wait. These kids have, these are humans and probably more intelligent than most of us are. Just not lived as long, but boy, we should be listening. And then but they weren't necessarily speaking. Right. Mm-hmm. And so how do you, my thing was like, wait, if we want to listen, we need them to feel confident and empowered to speak, to know that their voice is valuable, to know that their vision and their purpose has a significant place on our planet and that we need them.
Absolutely. One of the things that triggered just what you just said is that, and I talk about this in workshops as well with young people, is that we have to figure out what our blueprint is. What were we programmed when we were kids? You know, we hear parents say to their children all the time, oh, she's so lazy, or he's a troublemaker, or he's this, and she doesn't like spinach, and whatever. They're being programmed into this false land of giving them limitations. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because the work that you're doing is helping deprogram that exactly the blueprint that they've been given.
Well, I work mostly with K-8 and focus specifically, in 4 through 8. Like that's been the biggest drive. And that's, thousands and thousands of kids. I mean, a year ago, it was like served 12,000 kids. And in this work that says, hey, you matter. Every word you say matters. Every action you have matters. And if you know that, then you can stand up and do whatever it is that you dream of and what matters to you. You're going to go do it. And can you imagine if we as adults had this kind of empowerment, or if we had this confidence, if we knew we mattered, but in middle school? Mm-hmm. If by the time we hit middle school, I asked people how often they would go back and redo middle school years, 11 to 14-ish. And I think in 29 years now, I've had one parent go, yeah, I liked those years, but most of us were like, yeah, thanks, no. Right. So mm-hmm. They're confusing years, and that's just genetic. Like we're supposed to be, like a bit of trying to find our way. And if we find our way in at least knowing that we count and that we, are going to make a difference, then we can make some very, very significant choices through high school and into our future.
It's so true.
And they're so open. They're so open. People are like, oh, they're so stubborn. I'm like, no, they're not stubborn. They're just, it's the process. Think about you at 14. You're not, it's just the process. And so, gosh, you just give kids a chance to step into their power, and they do. We don't have to tell them what they should think or do, or even the steps to get there. I consider myself an access opener. We open the access for them to step into their power, and they don't need me to be 7 steps or 7 habits or 7 this or 7 that. They know what to do when they get that they can. And that's what I find. It's amazing.
Well, when they're offered the chance to have their voice heard, and I truly believe, if you look through history and evolution, the children increasingly get more brighter and smarter and faster and quicker. And I think it has a lot to do with how the world evolves and technology. And I see little kids that are like a year old already operating computers and iPads and things like that. It's just amazing. I love watching children, and to have people like you and our next guest that's coming up, in a few minutes, to have you people helping to shape and open the access, like you said. So what's coming up this year for your workshops and your camps? I know you do things in the Los Angeles area, but what's coming up? Tell me more.
Well, we've been working a variety of places. Like we just did a legacy training. And so the word camp is kind of something people use because we do a lot of everything we do is experiential, so that people, I say, when you hear something, you might remember it. When you do it, it's a little bit better chance. But when you hear, do, and feel something, there's no way to undo what you have just experienced. And so it gives us access to choose a new way, because we've now felt what it feels like to contribute to others and see the impact on that. The direct impact of my words and actions on another human really gives us an opportunity to tap into what we want, and then the access to allow others to contribute to us. And we're so often, we live in this little box of isolation of, don't let anyone in, don't reach out too much, might get taken, like all these stories that adults tell us we're supposed to believe about other humans is just so, defines us as someone small when we're really very large. And, so we just did a legacy camp, and we had, kids from all over LA and Standing Rock up in, North Dakota and we have some 7th grade camps coming up. If you think about an entire 7th grade class on a school campus doing this work and doing a 3-day training, they go back to school and their whole campus climate changes 100%. Like, these kids go back to school with an absolute personal choice and desire to look after one another rather than go after one another. And the schools that have been doing this for long periods of time are like, we have almost no office referrals anymore. We don't have the bystander thing, gone. Because these kids just step up and say, no, I'm not going to watch that happen.
This needs to be like demanded curriculum in the classroom, because I believe this is one of the solutions. I'm talking about solutions every day now. There's so much talk that's going on, people grandstanding and doing, talking about what the problem is, but no one's offering solutions.
Well,
so
and
that's a great thing to do. We need to help kids in the schools.
Well, Tess, what you just said about curriculum in schools, so that's what we're doing. We have 2 school districts now, full on in Southern California area, taking what I wrote as LDTPE, which is Leadership Development Through Physical Education. And we're training physical education teachers, PE teachers in elementary and middle school to do social development, or what we call EI or EL, which is emotional literacy and emotional intelligence work, training through PE. So it's kind of like, their eyes are like, in the training, they're like, what? You want me to teach I statements and, appreciations and confidence and resiliency skills through PE? And we're like, yeah, great. Perfect. You're the one. And now we have these PE teachers who are so engaged. They're like, I'm a better parent now. I cannot believe what I'm seeing happening. So that's the growth that we're in right now, is that it is in schools. And it's district wide across a couple districts, with one new district piloting right now, of how, because everybody knows, every school district knows we need this work in our schools. But how do you get it done? And a packaged workbook telling kids, the golden rule, do unto others. Well, no, every kindergartner knows the golden rule. It doesn't make us more kind. Knowing something does not drive us to make the right decision or the empowered decision to look after ourselves or others or the planet. Just knowing it does not fix it. We have to want to do it. And how do we do that? We have to feel it. And when we feel it, so that's what PE is doing. So,
I love that. It's a brilliant approach, because when you try to reach into the schools, which I've done in the past, and it's almost impossible because they have so many state regulations that they need to have with their science, their technology, their English, their math requirements. But to go into the PE department is absolutely brilliant, because it gives them, the mind, body, soul connection. It gives them activity and action. It's brilliant. I love this. I want to talk more about this offline too, because there might be some ways that we can get them into more schools, because when we have these healthy places in the schools, things like the shootings in the schools, we'll be talking about this in this episode as well, because there has to be some solutions to find places where people can be empowered and kids can have their voices heard, and they can really come together like what your curriculum is doing. So before we take a break, I do want to talk about and bring up the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is how we met. And you mentioned your daughter, Shailene Woodley, for all of you that know who she is. She's an amazing activist as well. And the work that you two have done with the Dakota Access Pipeline and the conservation efforts in Baja California. I want to talk about that, because it's going to lead, because you mentioned something before we started the show about how the youth kind of mobilized and went out, and how that's really relevant to what's going on today. So talk about the Dakota Access Pipeline. Where are we in that? The last I left off is that it was all these activists were there. I was on my way there, and then everything was kind of calmed down, and then it spun out again. So give us an update of what's going on, because we don't get much in the news these days.
Yeah, because, there's nothing to film, right? So there's the Dakota Access Pipeline and the Standing Rock movement died as a camp, as a physical movement where thousands and thousands of people showed up and pitched tents and came together as a community in a way nobody had seen before so publicly. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that Standing Rock is everywhere, and Standing Rock lives on everywhere. The kids who said, hey, you're not going to taint our water. You're not going to put our water at risk, and mobilized. I got involved with Standing Rock when I met Shailene in New York in Union Square on the last day of the youth's run. And they had just come from DC. New York was their final stop. before headed home after like a month of running.
Wow.
And these kids were from 8 years old to 25, and they ran that distance, and they stood in front of, the Army Corps and said, hey, we matter, and this has to stop. And Shailene, she kind of jumped on. She was in the RV and running all over the country with the DNC stuff, and she kind of joined the runners midway. And that's what activated her to be like, she was already in touch with the tribe and had already been on Standing Rock a few times. But when she met these kids and she saw that spark, she can relate to it. My kid's she's a spark in this world, and she could relate to that. And she's like, wow, I need to be involved. And so, she said, hey, please come. And she activated the public awareness for that whole process. And I, was deeply moved when I was there, and they came running in and singing and chanting and praying and dancing. And I had to go to Standing Rock. And I was there for, I was there 5 times during the actual time when the camps were up. And then I've been back to Standing Rock ever since. So I keep going back because they're inviting me in to work with their youth.
Oh, I love that.
And we've been bringing their youth to Los Angeles, because to move youth out of, in anyone, like when I first started this work, I was 27. It was a very long time ago. And, it was like this camp that I was invited to go to that was all quote unquote, whatever this actually means, at-risk kids. I was told by my boss, you're going. And I kind of looked at that and I'm like, wow, I really like what we created here. And if you have only one of one, whatever it is, you have one, all this or all that, then you don't give anybody any exposure to one another. And exposure to one another, creates humility, or creates possibility, or creates understanding, and creates a new reality of who we are for each other. So Standing Rock did that globally. And last year I traveled to Portugal with LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, who started Sacred Stone. She's like Shay, but she's a tribe member and a historian on Standing Rock. And she and I traveled for 2 weeks to Portugal last year. And the way she speaks, Standing Rock has shifted in how it looks, but it has not shifted in its importance and its vision and its opportunity to inspire people to be involved in making change across our globe. Our humanity and planet, people and planet, as I say it, need us to be loud and loving and bold and compassionate. And they need our youth to be that. They need our adults to be that. But you know what? Adults are really hard to change our minds. Adults are stubborn. Kids are not.
This is fantastic segue to our next guest, who you're going to love, because you don't know much about him. Because
No.
I can't wait, because when we're going to take a break and we're going to bring Shane Feldman on, and then we're going to have a blast, because it's all about solutions now. And we have some exciting news to share and an amazing young man to bring onto the show. So hold on there, Lori. We're going to bring you back in as well to have a beautiful group conversation. And for the rest of you, we'll be right back.
The Life Changes Show is a premier radio show presented by the Life Changes Network, which is a company whose team has dedicated their lives not only to positive change, but to helping others observe and embrace, honor, and even celebrate their own changes, thus enabling a more positive, inspired life and helping to create a more positive and inspired world. From everyday people, celebrities, corporate giants, and children, we are here to help and to serve. With heart, integrity, and experience, we bring our message and positive intent into your lives through the Life Changes Show, lifechangesnetwork.com, and through guest appearances on other inspiring shows and events. If you wish to learn more about Life Changes Life Coaching, a private consultation with one of us, corporate or live event appearances, or if you would like us to appear on your radio or TV shows, please email us at info@lifechangesnetwork.com.
Here we are back at Gwen Talks Radio, and this is your host, Tess Cacciatore. I am giggling with joy and glee because all of us are living in kind of this weird dark time right now, it feels like, but I am seeing the cracks of light exploding around me. I feel like there's empowered people that are making solutions on the planet. I just had this most amazing conversation with my dear friend, Lori Woodley, and all the work that she's doing. We're going to bring her back in a few minutes. But in the meantime, I met Shane Feldman the other night. He stood up at this event that my friends, Tara Bennett-Smith and Sean put on, called 90-Minute Solutions. And it was fantastic. It was led by Calvin Festman, who was the MC, and Larry King was there, and Anna Cord was there, and just an amazing panel. And the first person that got up to speak was Shane. And I'll let him tell you what he said that night, because the stuff that he's doing is amazing. But to let you know, he is a global youth empowerment expert, TV personality, motivational speaker, and critically acclaimed producer. Feldman has been recognized by the United Nations and the President's Volunteer Initiative, serve.gov. And he's been listed on Youth in Motion Top 20 Under 20 list in 2017. It was announced that Shane Feldman would appear in the new A&E docuseries Undercover High. Feldman is the founder and CEO of Count Me In, the largest youth-led organization in the world, born out of what Feldman describes as a challenging transition into high school in 2008. So here is part of our solution on the planet. Bring Lori Woodley together with Shane Feldman. Shane, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Tess. It's amazing to be here. I'm excited to join this inspiring conversation.
Oh my gosh. Well, I met you less than a week ago, and I feel like I've known you for thousands of years, and that's impossible because you're so young and amazing. So tell me.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So what I can go in 1,000 directions with you, but what kind of struck a chord for me is the work that you're doing when you did the undercover work. So tell Lori and I about that, and our listeners, because we'll take that and branch it into all the work that you're doing with your Count Me In campaign and organization.
Well, Count Me In really started about a decade ago. It was born out of a challenging transition into high school, which ultimately led me to get involved in my community, turned everything around, and Count Me In started as this small school project back in high school to help other students who might be struggling the way that I was or may feel disenfranchised, to help them find a sense of belonging through community engagement. That's really what it started as. I may not have had that same vernacular back then, but that was certainly the underlying vision.
And how old were you when you did this? This is amazing. How old were you at that point?
So this all came about my freshman year of high school. That was when the idea first came out. But honestly, just for a small school project, the big goal that me and my group of friends that formed my team had, the big goal was for 50 students in our school to be involved in this assembly, this project that we were planning. And lo and behold, after we started planning and talking about what we were doing and how we were all about, inspiring students to get involved and how this was going to be entirely led by other students, well, suddenly we started to pique interest across the school, and quickly we ended up getting 20 people signed up, then 40, then 60. And long story short, 400 kids from 7 schools showed up to that first event. And the next year we planned an even larger event for over 1,000 students after we realized that we had really hit a chord and we were doing something no one else was, and really filling this void of youth-to-youth, peer-to-peer empowerment and connecting students to their community, which is something that, is part of human nature. We all want to feel that genuine connection. So Count Me In has really, really evolved over the last decade. It's been remarkable to watch it develop and grow. Our team is now 37 strong, spread across 4 countries and 3 continents. And we've now impacted more than 10 million youth in over 100 countries worldwide. And even with all this work, it's incredible even to, for me to say that, because really I just remember this starting out of my locker back in high school.
I want to cry right now. Oh my gosh. If I would have known all this when I met you last Saturday, I would have given you 1,000 hugs. You are so amazing and inspiring. Keep going. Tell us more.
Yes. Oh, you're amazing. I love this. Honestly, even with all this work and everything that I've done with teens, and I'm a speaker, so I spend a lot of time not only speaking to companies, but also speaking at schools and to educators. And even with the number of days and hours I have spent working with literally hundreds of thousands of students across the country and a handful of other locales, I still felt this growing disconnect as I start to grow old and gray in my 23 years on this earth. I'm only 23.
I noticed
all
the gray hair the other day. I was going to tell you might want to get some
right?
hair dye or something.
I've counted. I have 6 now.
Yes.
But honestly, even with all this work, I recognize that there was already starting to be this small but relevant disconnect between me and teenagers, because things are moving and shaping so rapidly, and it's already been a decade since I started high school. So things are very different now with smartphones and social media, just to name a couple, major players in the space. So I realized I really had to do something to get my finger back on the pulse of what was really going on in the trenches, in the front lines of teen life in America and around the world. And so I had this incredible opportunity to dive into a research experiment and kind of lead the charge of uncovering what it's really like to be a high school student today. And this research project allowed me to immerse myself back into high schools undercover as a teenager. And one of those high schools actually evolved into a very exciting project that I was excited to be invited to be part of, that was transformed into a documentary TV series airing on A&E network. So that evolved into a much larger story. It was actually 4-month deep cover in this high school. And it was incredible, these opportunities to really understand, empathize with, and learn from teenagers today, to understand the struggles they're facing, what it's actually like to be a teenager today, and how we as adults, parents, educators, mentors can better connect with and better support the teens who have what it takes, but need that sense of connection, that sense of empathy and support that often they are lacking. Because truthfully, if there's one thing I've uncovered, it's that this is the most misunderstood generation of all time. And in the same moment, they are also the most powerful generation, because they are facing challenges that previous teenagers could not even dream of. A lot of the pressures of high school remain the same, whether it's bullying or peer pressure, self-harm, social isolation, all these elements, these challenges that have faced generations and generations before, except now these are 24/7 issues facing every teen before and after the school bell rings, right? Because of technology, smartphones, social media, the pressure is on. It's harder than ever before to be a teen, but that is just bubbling up and making this truly what I believe to be the most powerful generation for change that we have ever seen on the planet. So it's an exciting time for sure, but also a time where I feel this need and this drive to close this gap between teens and adults, because they do need the support, they do need the understanding, and honestly, more than anything, I believe they need the compassion and the empathy from us.
Oh my God. Amen. I'm standing with a standing ovation of 1,000 me's, because what you stand for and what you're doing is amazing. What was it like when you walked onto campus and it's like your first day and you're going undercover? What did you feel? What did you do? How did you fit in?
I was equal parts terrified and excited. Terrified to immerse myself back in a place that, although high school had really become my stomping ground by the time I got to my sophomore year and junior year, freshman year, and starting at a new school in a new community just after I had moved and not knowing anyone, having no friends, it was a really hard time. That was one of the most difficult transitions I've ever experienced in my life. And so the idea of going back to school, starting fresh, in the middle of a city that I had, never been to, surrounded by students that I didn't know, and trying to fit in and find my place and maintain the cover while helping students and partaking in this research experiment. It was a lot. It was a lot to handle and very daunting going in. But from my first steps and, once I started navigating that path and finding my groove, it just turned into what I can only describe as one of the most fulfilling experiences I could ever imagine. Because not only was I able to quickly immerse myself, in fact, to be honest. I was mistaken as a freshman my first day. 23 years old, mistaken as a freshman. I will be carded until I'm 45. I have completely embraced that. You know, my Wikipedia profile picture looks almost identical to my junior high school yearbook photo.
That's a beautiful thing to have.
You know what? The ladies still call me cute, so it's all good.
Exactly.
And by ladies, of course, I mean my mother. But, you know, I found my place. The point is I found my place. And you know what? I was able to not only pull off the cover, but more importantly, really make an impact on these students, learn a lot from them, and really see as a peer what they were facing. Because, of course, high school students, teenagers in general, are so thoughtful and careful at architecting these massive, brave fronts that they build to keep adults out, to keep themselves safe and not as vulnerable. And it's different when you're a peer. You know, when you're a peer, that mask doesn't exist, right? Because you're on the same page. And so what I was able to learn from the front lines being in that situation, I feel like my heart broke and evolved by the minute while I was in school. You know, imagine going back to high school today with the knowledge that you have, with the experiences you have, and seeing almost like for the first time the kinds of challenges that perhaps you faced in high school, but you didn't have the awareness of what you were actually moving through. You know, what teens today are dealing with, it really is heartbreaking and tragic in so many ways. And again, the hardest part to me is just this growing, scary disconnect between them and the adults in their lives.
Wow. So what happened at the end of this 4 months when you had to tell? I'm sure you created some friendships and some bonds and people were loving you. What happened at the end of 4 months when you had to leave and you had to tell these high school people, I'm not really who I say I am?
Yeah, that was a tough one. You know, it was different. Of all the high schools I have done this research in, this was certainly the longest stint by a long shot. You know, 4 months is a lot of time to develop those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I was nervous about kind of coming forward in this school assembly and sharing who I am, what I do. And I was just hoping that they would understand and be accepting. But I did not expect to be toppled by the strongest round of applause I've ever heard in my life when I started by saying, I didn't realize how hard it is to be a teenager today. And for me, it was this moment where I got to acknowledge them and say that I see you, I hear you, and I've got your back. And for them, I think that just meant more than anything, because it was suddenly not a peer, it was an adult saying that I understand them. I really do. Thanking them for letting me into their world and giving them my pledge that I'm here to help.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Lori, are you crying over there like me?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So enthralled and passionately aligned with you, Shane, what you're doing and what you've done and continue to do, and having found your purpose so early is inspiring and
so amazing.
Again, it's what is possible. And can you imagine if all of our youth could find purpose so early? We would be a safe planet for everybody and included. Everyone would feel included and cared for and loved and know that they matter. Amazing. Thank you, Shane.
And that's all we all want, right? We just want to feel like we matter, we have value. And I think the more that we create safe spaces for teens and kids in general to express themselves, to explore their curiosities and try new things. I mean, I think that we live in this society where we are consistently pressured to find our thing, to make it count, to find our passion. And I just see all these students and adults. You can spend years and years and years searching for your passion and forget to live passionately. And I feel that what we need to do is create more spaces where students can just live from a place of passion and explore new things. And that's how they'll be able to find themselves and to really create meaningful connections with their peers, with their communities, offline as well, right? It's so easy to fall down that rabbit hole of online, to be sucked into the culture of instant gratification, validation, this like mentality, looking for all those likes and comments instead of genuine connection. I think the more that we foster real offline safe spaces for teens to explore and express themselves, the more we're going to find these change makers that just bubble up and find that sense of purpose much earlier on.
Yeah, exactly. And
and the fact that what Lori's doing with the workshops, the camps, and the curriculum and all that, it just seems like there's a beautiful trifecta here of a big solution-driven coalition that I'd love to talk to you both offline, because we have some distribution channels that could reach a lot of people and bring this curriculum into the schools in a massive way, because we need it right now. What I didn't mention. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, Shane, you're doing what I do, and I speak it as we are prevention based, right? Like we're looking at, we're not trying to fix something that's broken. We're saying, hey, it doesn't need to be broken.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I love that. And it's, most things are intervention. Like once there's something broken, let's just not get broken. And let's learn that little breaks, little knee scrapes can just have a Band-Aid and we're okay. We actually can rebound from that and we can move forward. We don't need to villainize little things that go wrong, because life's not easy. It's not. And we all, have the ability to rebound through the experiences that make us stronger. So anyways, I'm a big prevention person.
Well, prevention is a big key to the solution now. And I want to kind of topple into some shady areas of what's going on in the world. What I didn't mention in the introduction is Shane comes from Canada, where there's no problem with gun laws and people going into public places and churches, where we feel safe in our schools and in our communities at concerts, and be mowed down by semi-automatic weapons. It's just crazy. And the youth that are rising up, and we talked about this earlier, that the youth movement kind of started this century, at least, or this decade, with the Dakota Pipeline passionate protests. And now March 24th, we're coming into another rally that's being taken to the streets. So I want to talk about what's happening in the schools right now, finding that prevention and trying to find that solution so that kids feel safe to go back into schools. So who wants to start on that one? Because I'm really just so thrilled that there's going to be something happening, but I'm afraid that what we saw on the news yesterday or last week, where they said, let's bring more guns into the schools. To me, I think that's an absurd, quote, solution. So I want to talk to both of you and have this conversation about where do you think we can go and how can we provide another way?
Well, one of the things I'd like to say is don't be afraid, Tess. We can't walk through the fear of any of this, afraid of what won't happen because there are people who have a different point of view than us.
Yes, and they have another agenda too.
Right. But what we have is our complete passion and conviction that what we're doing and what we believe and what we speak to is a way to save lives.
Yes.
It's a way to bring peace across the planet. While sometimes the fear grips me, I'm like, no fear, only conviction for what I know to be really absolutely true. And if someone on the other side believes their conviction is absolutely true, they're going to say what they say. But right now they cannot make me afraid for what I know is right.
I'm so inspired these days. I'm not in the fear mode either. I just feel like we need to talk about it more and have these voices, your voices, both of your voices out there, because it's very important timing for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think it's about, you can't get sucked into the fear, but you also can't be ignorant. So this is a time of awareness and of pushing a conversation forward. I feel very lucky to have this interesting balance of insight coming from Canada, but doing the grand majority of my work, especially over the last number of years, in the United States. And I don't know many people who have experienced high schools in the number of countries that I have, not only immersed in them undercover as students, but also as a speaker and a leadership facilitator, working alongside administrations and educators in various capacities. And what I have seen across the country and around the world is this universal theme that the answer is in our children. These students, these teenagers, even younger elementary school students, they have the answers if we allow them our ears and our eyes and show up and listen to them. What they need, like I said before, and I'll preach this, for days, we need to show up and to create these spaces where our kids feel heard and our kids feel seen. The next step is that they feel understood. They feel empathy, right? You look at, remarkable students like Emma Gonzalez, who is one of the students leading the charge out in Florida right now. And just one of many incredible stories. And regardless of what you believe, what you see, what you hear, red, blue, truth be told, I don't care, right? I think that we can all find some element of agreement that these students are coming from a place of such authenticity, such drive to really create change. And it's sadly coming from a place of absolute trauma and tragedy. But they feel moved, and they do not have this space of being held back. They're not thinking about the legal ramifications. They're not thinking about, what the negative PR. Like they are just thinking about solutions. And that's what kids do, right? They're not jaded like adults are. They're not going down a checklist of here are all the things we can and cannot do, can and cannot say. They're going out there with a full force of their hearts and really sharing from this place of mourning and tragedy, having gone through something that no kid, no human should ever have to go through, let alone a child. These kids aren't even 18 yet for the most part. And it's just heartbreaking and at the same time so moving to see these kids leading the charge to really drive change, because this conversation needs to happen. Another thing I feel we can all agree on, regardless of your side, I think it's quite ridiculous that there even is a side in,
there
or
shouldn't be a side.
Situation, right? But I do believe that regardless of where you stand, what your beliefs are, religion, politics, whatever, we can all agree that a conversation needs to happen, that this is the time. In fact, the time was probably 5 or 10 years ago, but fine, we'll agree that it's right now. So let's do something about it. And let's start by listening to not the people in their fancy boardrooms, not the people in chambers, not even the people in the news, or in the White House, right? Listen to our students. Listen to the ones that are on the forefront of this issue that have so much to say, have such breadth of knowledge. And honestly, I think most importantly, that are just coming from a place of one agenda that's out there, authentic and transparent for the world to see, and that is their safety and their well-being, something, again, I think we can all agree should be top of mind of importance for everyone.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And what we're talking about it isn't anything to do with political lines. Mm-hmm. You take it out of the boardrooms and you listen to kids and you wipe away any kind of political agendas, because they just want to feel safe when they go to school. And it's not happening, right? Like the more and more times we deal with a mass shooting or even a one-person shooting, it is tragically, right there in their eyes about how much more unsafe they're getting. And just take out the blue, red, take it out. The reality is they just want to go to school and feel safe. And they're the voice that is going to shoot, move us and propel us into a action plan. And that, that's my notice, choose, act thing. It's like conversations are good, but the action that they're doing, right? Like noticing what's wrong and choosing a new outcome. All of that is fantasy. Intention without action is fantasy. And kids are willing to be in action. And that's why, it works so well to teach them that they have the power to actually choose, because they're willing to step in and act if they feel like they have the confidence and that there's value in it.
Where the action, though, comes into that affects politics is a very important statistic, is that come November, there's going to be millions and millions of young people that have turned 18 or are about to ready to turn 18. And one of my favorite quotes over the last week was a young man that stood up and said, for those politicians that aren't doing the right thing and putting laws in place that are going to protect us, I hope you enjoy retirement.
Yeah.
And I said, oh my God, I love this guy. And Gonzalez and all these voices that are standing up because they have the power to change the vote. They change the politics, they change the voice, they change the law. And that's another action item that I think is a good solution too. Oh my gosh, this is so juicy and amazing. I'm going to have you both on again because we only have an hour of the show and we need to get to our music spotlight. But the charity spotlights are so obvious right now because it's going to be cmimovement.com and allittakes.org are our two charity spotlights for the day. And I just want to let you know, stay tuned for where to find the links and to support these charities beyond this charity spotlight on Gwen Talks Radio. So let's just go around and do a recap of what last minute things that you weren't able to say that you're bursting from the seams to share and give, where they can find you on social media.
You can find us at allittakes.org on social media all over and follow what the amazing youth of our programs are creating in their own lives and hence in the world, because it's a ripple effect. Every word we say, every action we take has a ripple effect across the globe. And our kids are the ones that are going to, make it all right.
Yay. And speaking of young people making it all right, Shane, where can we find you in social media and what last minute words of wisdom would you like to share?
Sure. Well, I just followed you on all your channels, Lori. Excited to follow your work. And anyone that's interested in following Count Me In or our work, cmimovement.com is the website. And on social, if you search Shane Feldman, or on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the books, all the places, Shane Feldman or CMI Movement.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much. And we're going to take a break. I'm going to come back and talk about the music spotlight of the week. And we are going to wind this up to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't wait to continue the conversations with you both. So we'll be right back.
Gwen Talks Radio is a division of Gwen.live, an entertainment platform for accelerating social good, featuring films, series, books, music, and radio from around the world to bridge cultures and connect us all. We want to hear from you, create with you, activate with you, and work together in unison for a better world. Join the Gwen movement. Go to Gwen.live today.
What an extra special show today, especially in the confines of where we are in society and knowing that youth speak out, and those of us that are adults that work with youth like Lori Woodley and All It Takes and Shane Feldman's work with Count Me In. I'm just so pleased to know that there are people out there that are caring about our youth, and the youth are standing up and uniting. And now turning into our music spotlight, I want to just give a big shout out to Lizzie Sider, who's one of our Gwen gals. She's been featured on our show a couple of times prior with Just Like a Girl was last fall, and then we did her beautiful rendition of Silent Night at the holiday show. And so today, this is one of the first songs she ever wrote called Butterfly. And I thought it was fitting to be in the show because it's all about empowerment and knowing how to take on school bullying, which is a very centered problem of how we can really resolve school violence and building confidence. And Lizzie has gone all over the country, touring to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. She is rising in the charts all the time with her songs. This song, Butterfly, has a very special place in my heart, and I just want to give a big shout out to her and all the work that she's doing in the world. When we come back from that music spotlight with Lizzie Sider and Butterfly, we'll go right into Mind Over Matter Minute to remind us that at least take one beautiful minute of the day at least and give yourself some love. Breathe deep, meditate, listen for answers of questions that you might be seeking for. and know that everyone in your life is there for a reason, and love deep and love hard, because we never know when life can end. And this is a blessing to my dear friend Stephen Shern, who passed away this week. Remember, the world is much better with you in it, and until next time, many blessings.
I used to hide and keep inside, afraid to show the world who I was. In shades of gray, I'd spend my days so invisible, because they'd always put me down. Yeah, let them keep me down. But look at me now, finally coming out and wanting to fly. Gonna spread my wings, bright and colorful things, let them take me up to touch the sky. They thought they knew me plain and shy, but all along I was a butterfly. Why live a life in black and white, wrapped up in a safe little space? It's only fear that kept me here, with dreams too big for this small place. They liked me deaf and dumb, had no idea what I'd become. And look at me now, finally coming out and wanting to fly. Gonna spread my wings, bright and colorful things, let them take me up to touch the sky. They thought they knew me plain and shy, but all along I was a butterfly. These colors of mine are unique, gonna be who I'm meant to be. Now I see it's all up to me. Look at me now, finally coming out and I wanting to fly. Gonna spread my wings, bright and colorful things, let them take me up to touch the sky. They thought they knew me plain and shy, but all along I was a butterfly. Yeah, I am a butterfly. Oh yeah, yeah, I am a butterfly. Yeah, I am a butterfly.
And now, a Mind Over Matter Minute. Thank you for listening. Visit us at gwen.live and join our Gwen community. Share what's on your mind.